NetSparker, the developers of a comprehensive automated web security platform that includes web vulnerability scanning, assessment, and management. NetSparker's desktop and cloud-based security solutions employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities and provides a proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at securityweekly.com/NetSparker. Hackers attack systems that are not patched. You need protection, but virtual patching isn't working. That's why you go patchless. Topia analyzes, prioritizes, and remediates vulnerabilities before they're exploited. Even the 0 days, all from one interface. Security gets better memory defense to complement endpoint strategy while improving overall vulnerability management and compliance. Adopt a hacker's mindset, eliminate vulnerability. Get your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/vicarious. Sophisticated attackers are targeting credentials to escalate privileges. Ativo Networks provides an innovative solution that finds, cleans, and monitors exposed credentials to reduce attack surfaces. Additionally, the solution alerts when attackers try accessing Active Directory objects while hiding data and derailing them with disinformation. Organizations can go one step further and hide real credentials among deceptive lures that lead attackers to decoys for recording TTPs and forensic evidence. Find out more at securityweekly.com/Ativo Networks and sign up for a free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Join Amit Barakat, the co-founder and CEO of Perimeter 81, and myself for a technical deep dive into the problems inherent in legacy VPN technology. Together, we will explore solutions for the modern workforce and how momentum towards a perimeterless architecture is helpful in redefining the future of cybersecurity. Register now at securityweekly.com/perimeter81. This segment is sponsored by Polarity. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/Polarity. Joining us for this segment is Polarity CEO and founder Paul Batista. Paul is the former intelligence officer for the Central Intelligence Agency's Information Operations Center, where he participated in all elements of the intelligence cycle, from planning operations through dissemination to senior policymakers in the White House. Before his government service, Paul was a senior engineer for Aetna, a penetration tester, and incident responder for multiple Fortune 100 customers. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Paul. Appreciate it.
It is nice to have you on, Paul. Yes, and now you're an entrepreneur, hacker entrepreneur extraordinaire, and I feel like you've created something really, truly unique, right? I've never seen anything like what you've created, and I'm excited to have you on the show to talk about some of the enhanced features, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem we're solving is probably not unique. I heard it mentioned in the last segment around context, but the software and how we do it is unique. We set out to solve a problem that was the only way we could figure out how to do it. We recognized that context should be available everywhere across all applications, and so we built essentially computer vision or augmented reality for your desktop to overlay context.
Yeah, and what I don't like about it, Paul, is it eliminates my need to have a 49-inch curved screen monitor or multiple monitors and 8 million tabs, right? I think it's one of the problems that it's solving, right? As security analysts and engineers, when we're looking at data and trying to correlate it across and get context on it, I think that's what we end up with, right? We end up with multiple, not just a browser with multiple tabs, multiple browsers with multiple tabs, going across multiple monitors to try and put all those pieces together. And I think from the recent demo that you showed me, Paul, it really eliminates that and just streamlines my workflow. Did I capture that correctly?
Chrome stock is going down just from Polarity launching.
Yes.
We, you definitely look at the number of portals that security professionals are required to log into and say, all right, how can we reduce that? I still have a ton of tabs, I'll admit, and I still think having multiple desktops does help with productivity.
Let's make sure we solidify that so we can justify that when we're ordering all these monitors and putting in purchase requests.
Let's not go down that road.
Yeah. We still need that. Okay.
You really only need a 12-inch monitor in black and white, and you'll be fine.
I think the winning balance is 2 regular big monitors and 1 touch screen, and you put the touch screen right at your fingertips.
There you go.
That's where I've found productivity balance for monitors, because you couldn't have too much space. I remember setting up I think it was at 4 monitors. I'm like, this is too much, because you start losing where you put the windows.
absolutely. I guess, Paul, you're obviously the expert in this area, and I know you've been on the shows in the past. But speaking of the problem you're trying to solve, how do you do that? We call it augmented reality, and I kind of teased that in this segment. And I know it sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, perhaps, but you've brought that to a very real world application to real practitioners.
Yeah. So for us, we looked at, all right, we want to enable collaboration across all applications, across all tools, all workflows, recognizing that very cliched problem, two analysts, two operators, both working on the same thing. They don't know about one another. So the kind of glue that we saw was augmented reality, but glasses, putting on a set of glasses or goggles while you're staring through one pane of glass to look at another is just bulky and wasteful. So we figured out how to implement it in software, and that was really that aha moment. It came to us while we were doing incident response and putting IP addresses and host names up on a whiteboard. That whiteboard filled up. We had to take a picture of it, filled up a second whiteboard, took a picture of that. And, at some point, just gathering context around that one investigation was overwhelming. We said, well, what if it wasn't glued to a given application or, put up on a whiteboard or a notepad? What if when something's on my screen, I just got that context automatically? And that was that aha moment that said, all right, let's build these computer vision algorithms specialized for cybersecurity professionals and pixels on a screen to really give context. And the thing I'd love to show off today is our community edition, where you can get context around vulnerabilities and IP addresses while you're doing either red team work or blue team. It doesn't really matter.
And I think what largely is the takeaway, Paul, that I got that you're going to show in this segment is the extensibility of the framework you've built that you can build in the free community edition. And then there's some differences when you get to the enterprise version in terms of collaboration, right? But if you're a single analyst, you get the community edition and you can extend it yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah, so, and I'll share, we have a whole bunch of open source projects, I think over 130 of them now built on top of the platform. And so that allows you to really extend the functionality of the tool. And with the community edition, it's single user account. So when you sign up, you're getting just your user account. So you don't have the collaboration features that the enterprise product does, but you do get to pick several, up to 4 integrations that are available out on GitHub and open source, and then really around your workflow. So if you're, as I'll demo here today, if you're concerned about CVEs, back to the last segment, and vulnerabilities, then you'd pick those integrations associated with that type of data that you care about. Or maybe you're more concerned about IPs or file hashes or threat data. Then you'd pick the integrations that maybe integrate with your threat intel platform or your orchestration platform.
Mm. And what are the integrations written in if someone's going to embark on this journey?
They're written in JavaScript, so they run as Node.js modules in their own Node.js sandbox. And you basically define 3 things: what to recognize on the screen, what actions to take, and what information to overlay. And you have an integration.
And the application, Paul, is that supported across all platforms? Because JavaScript can run on all these platforms, right?
So the Polarity client runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and the integrations themselves run on a Polarity server. With the Community Edition account, that's something that we host for you. Mm-hmm. With the Enterprise account or Enterprise product, you would host that in your own organization or in your own cloud environment.
That's awesome. And when we talk about this, Paul, I'm always kind of interested in exactly what this solves for me, like what those integrations actually bring to the table. So I'm excited to kind of jump into your demo to show some of these integrations in exactly what information, right? Because you're kind of given this blank palette of, well, I can overlay anything on the screen and bring context to anything. It's kind of overwhelming. So I was excited where you're going to show us some of those exact use cases.
Yeah, we absolutely built a platform. So with platforms come lots of different things you can build. We are focused on the cyber use cases right now. So many of the integrations that are already built, that are out on GitHub, whether they're built by us or partners or customers, they mostly have a cyber focus. And and then you need to decide, all right, well, am I diving into IPs or vulnerabilities or hashes, or maybe something else we haven't thought of. Unix epic or epoch time is probably the simplest integration we have. It converts a non-human readable time into a readable time. And that's like 2 lines of code, right? The simplest form, all the way up through, maybe some of our more complicated integrations connect to your orchestration, your store.
2 lines of code when you're dealing with time is about an hour's worth of reading 16 different examples on Stack Overflow till you find one that works.
That's right.
Unless you're Joff, and then it just works the first time.
Or you're me, and then it takes 2 hours. So
right. So Paul, go ahead and dig into it.
Yeah, happy to share my screen and show some of this in action.
Did he just say it works the first time for me? Yes, it does. It totally does.
Only because like 5 years ago you spent the hour or two to figure out and actually remembered it, and then because you teach it, and then yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Says the man who just said 5 minutes ago, "Oh, I got a 404."
Hey, only got it once, and then I fixed the code.
There you go.
So shut up, you.
But technically, you got it the second time.
Oh,
Just saying.
what am I going to do with you, man?
So you found what you were looking for from your 404, I guess.
There you go.
So I'll just show one PowerPoint slide. I swear, I promise. This one slide kind of sums it up. As a penetration tester, an analyst, or an incident responder, this balance applies to all of our roles in information security. You have the analyst or the pen tester who's extra thorough. They dive down every rabbit hole. They find every vulnerability that's within their ability to find. It takes them a long time to do their job, but they're extra thorough. This is the top left quadrant here, the top left. Now, you also have the analyst who operates on gut instinct, right? This is the person who doesn't go down every rabbit hole. They get excited about that first vulnerability they find, and they spend all the time exploiting the first vulnerability during the pen test to get in, but then they miss the other 3 that they should have caught, right? This is probably where I was when I was an analyst or incident responder or a pen tester. Then you have the kind of bottom left. This is where no one wants to be. This is the analyst who's not only really slow, but also not thorough, right? So hopefully most folks don't fall within this quadrant. And where we're always trying to enable folks to play is in the top right. This is the analyst who is thorough, so 100% thorough across the data you care about, while also speeding up analysis or your pen testing, your incident response. So whatever role you are, we're trying to allow you to be more thorough with data, but also speed you up at the same time. All right, and that's it with PowerPoint. I'll jump into live software here. All right, so from the show notes, I might have missed some, but I grabbed all the CVEs mentioned in the last 10 shows. And I wanted to kind of give a demonstration here. We have a lot of CVEs on the screen. Maybe some of them jump out to you as things that Vicarious would have talked about. And hey, what should we prioritize first to fix? I'm going to kind of show that in action with Polarity. So if you go to polarity.io right now /SW for Security Weekly.
Wait, Paul, I have to ask, did you listen to the show and hear us say those, or did you just scrape the wiki?
A little combination of both. I can't tell you every single episode, but
nice.
Some of
good answer.
And some I scraped right out of the wiki for the show.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, how many of these are in the top 25 list that NSA put out last week?
Some probably.
Probably some, because we talked about some of them.
Yeah, there's 4 right there.
Okay.
Can anyone spot all the ones that have publicly available exploits for them right now? How long would it take you to figure that out?
A lot of Googling.
Is this a Kahoot quiz? Wait a minute. Where's my interface?
Where do we click?
That would take some time.
This is going to be easier than the Kahoot quiz, don't worry.
And it's right to left, Jeff. Right to left.
All right, so check this out. Right now, I have the version of Polarity that's equivalent to the free version of Polarity. So everything I'm going to show for a while now is available for free today for anyone who wants to try it out. I'm just hitting a keystroke. So I just held down Control C on what was on my clipboard there, the first 4 vulnerabilities. And what you'll see is I pulled back some CVE data. All right, so vector network, no authentication, score of 5. I can click and view more details here. But you'll notice this one pops out. So there's 2 integrations at play here. There's one with the CVE data, and then there's a second integration that we've been calling Exploit Finder. Simply put, it looks at a CVE. It goes and searches Google for various websites like ExploitDB, Packet Storm Security, GitHub, and it looks for proof of concept code. So this 2 possible exploits here is actually linking out to code. In this case, it found some on GitHub, and that opened up on my other monitor. Sorry, too many monitors. But linked out and gave me some exploit code. So that kind of quick analysis of, let me see, I have 4 CVEs to triage. How fast can I figure out what's remotely exploitable, and how fast can I find public code that maybe I can use if I'm a script kiddie and not writing my own code on this. Makes sense to reuse what other people's work if possible.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a script kiddie thing, right? Start from someone else's starting point. Also, I like the extensibility that I'm assuming you can modify this particular, is it a plugin or an add-on? What is your terminology there, Paul?
Yeah, so we call them integrations.
Yeah, so I can modify the integration because I just found a new site that I've been using. It's exploit.kitploit.com, which lists out a whole bunch of exploits, right? So as we all know, being in this field for as long as we all have collectively, that sites that host exploits change a lot over time. There's new ones cropping up and other ones that kind of fade away. And I like that feature, that it's probably really, from what you've showed me, I know it's really easy to update that, right?
That's right. Yeah, and when I was setting this up for the first time, I realized that one of my old favorites, Millworm, had been shut down for many years. So I've been out of it for too long on the offensive side to see. But yeah, you're absolutely right. These things change over time. And I was really surprised, I guess, looking at this data, how many exploits are on GitHub these days. So
yes.
As the place to post it. All right. So that was with a keystroke. Again, you can select text, hold down Control C, and it's going to pull back context on that. In this case, CVE and exploits. You can also turn on highlight mode for Polarity. And now at this point, what happens is we're using that augmented reality, and we're actually highlighting inline. So now you have a quick visual. Anything with an orange tint, hopefully that's coming through, is content that has, Exploit Finder has found vulnerabilities for. So I can see 65 possible public exploits for this one. I can see, 1 for that one, and here 143. So network, no auth, 7.5 score, 143 exploits. This is probably something that Vicarious would say we should patch pretty quickly, or use their technology to mitigate. So this is an example here. So this is the SMB Ghost, and right within, again, sorry, opened up on the other monitor for dramatic effect. I'll click it again. You can see I'm linked out to the exploit resources really, really quickly.
It's awesome.
And again, this is just one integration, right? One integration out of, like, what do you guys up? Your 100 and almost 40 repos just of your stuff.
That's right. So I will kind of break down what integrations are, and then I'll go out to our GitHub page and kind of show that off. For an example here, I'm going to actually use something outside of cybersecurity. I'm going to use our Google Maps integration. So what I mentioned before we jumped into the technical segment here, integrations are defined by 3 things: what to recognize on the screen, what actions to take, and what information to overlay. In this case, in this example, we're recognizing a latitude and longitude. So this is a log from a cruise ship. I have a latitude and longitude on my screen. I'm recognizing latitude and longitude. The second thing I'm doing is connecting out to the Google API and running a search, Google Maps API and running a search. And the third thing I'm doing is overlaying an interactive map. So I can see that this cruise ship is in port in the Key West right now. So what you put in this window is really kind of up to that developer. There we go. I got lucky and dropped us on the beach. So that is built in, as we mentioned before, in JavaScript. It runs as a Node.js module. And I'll pull up an example of that. So here's the first thing I mentioned. You define what to recognize. So regular expression of a latitude and longitude or of a property address. The second thing you define is the actions to take. So this is this integration.js file. And so you can see less than 200 lines of code. This integration took about 3 hours to build. The third thing is what to overlay. So here, 14 lines of code, basically passing through Google Maps here. But if you wanted to bring in, interactive graph or data from Splunk or Elasticsearch, really can paint this window with whatever you want to put in there. So here, public GitHub page. Whoops, did not mean to click features there. And you can see 138 projects so far publicly available. So you have, feel free to go there and browse a lot of different things from, Intel sources through tools like URL Scan, Splunk, MaxMind, RiskIQ, just kind of naming off a handful here. As Tyler put it, there's a lot of different use cases and things you can build on top of it. And with the enterprise version, you can even build custom integrations that would connect to your internal sources. Now, that's one of the key things to point out. With the community edition, we're connecting out to publicly available data sources, so things that are available on the internet. When you go to the enterprise edition, you're able to connect to internal sources. So another example. So for this specific setup and the one, the community edition that we set up for Security Weekly, if you go to polarity.io/SW, gives you a drop down there. You can select the Security Weekly version. That version has on it the exploit finder, the CVE context, URL scan, Shodan, which requires you to put in your Shodan API key. So you'd have to go to their site and grab that, and MaxMind data. So I'm going to show off some of the Shodan and URL scan stuff now. So let's say I'm starting a pen test here. I'm taking a look at one of my target ranges. Well, here I grab the DNS, the IP based on the DNS, but I can also, again, hitting a keystroke now this time, fill in Shodan data. So I can see, hey, port 123 and 22 are open before I even ran the port scan there. I can also click and see the preview of the website here through URL scan. So this was done, in command prompt. If I was in, maybe I'm a PowerShell user, if I was in PowerShell instead, it would work just the same. So different site, different IP here. Going to pull in some of the Shodan data and URL scan data as well. So there's the preview, and we can see ports.
And that's just using the on-demand mode, right? Like if you have the heads-up display, that's obviously going to highlight a color based on what your preferences are for that particular IP.
That's right. So for many data sets, analysts, users will prefer that a user action occurs to trigger a lookup. So for instance, there's two ways that we can do that. You can paste it in here like traditional search, hit the search button and run a search on that. That's on demand. In other words, you're running the search when you want to. The other way to do it is by hitting a keystroke. In this case, you just hold down Control-C. So you select any text that you want to run. And when it's on the clipboard, so you select text, and then you hold down Control-C, and it fires off a search.
I need this in my life. When I get the motivation when I'm like, oh, I want to look into this phishing attack or whatever, you get all of this data that presents itself on the screen that you're like, oh, I want to know the information about that IP or that domain name or that URL, and you can just bring all that right in without. Yeah, that saves a lot of time.
From a defensive standpoint, or threat intelligence or OSINT, like even offensive. Like offensive, this has a ton of capability, but thinking from the defensive side and like quick incident response or threat intelligence and OSINT, the amount of data you get in a very short amount of time with just a few key integrations, not to mention some curated integrations, like it is overwhelming how fast you operate. Like someone asks you a question, you're literally like spending more time copying and pasting the answer than actually getting the data.
Tyler Robinson, Polarity user. It sounds like you've used it quite extensively, Tyler. It's awesome.
Well, it looks like something I need in my life, but I did miss the very first part. I mean, how So you said it was running Node.js, and how do you actually trigger the overlay from your desktop or browser environment?
Sure. So Polarity runs as desktop software
Okay.
on your desktop, and with the Community Edition account, you're connecting out to a cloud account that we're hosting for you.
Okay.
For Enterprise, it connects to a server that's internal to your network. But the Node.js runs on the server side. So that's what would be running in Community Edition, what we're hosting, or Enterprise, what your organization would host. The desktop software runs local, and you essentially can select on demand or highlight here. Here I have two mode here. This is me showing, hey, it's running in a VM, so I'm going a little Inception on you here. But I can run it in a mode where it's highlighting information, or it's only triggering based on a clipboard and a search here. That is running as local, computer vision. So all that computer vision happens locally. So let's say when I change this window here, I'll put this, go Inception here. So this application is going to recognize my VM here. I got Kali Linux running.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't matter what the application is, Paul. It could be a VM, it could be a browser. It doesn't matter because it's reading what's on the screen, not application specific.
That's right. So so this, a VM really makes that clear. So if I was to move my window here, you can see how the highlight kind of disappears slightly there as I move, and then augmented reality style catches back up, tracks it, and finds the information. So
it's freaking
in
heads
that
up
example,
display on your computer.
Right? Yeah, that's
so okay. I'm sold on the idea. Let me ask you a difficult question.
Go for it.
Today we live in a world of surveillance capitalists who sell all the data they get. You're going to get a lot of data. You're going to sell it.
Good
That's why it runs
question.
in your own environment.
No, and actually we don't get a lot of that data. So paranoid security professional, when we built this, we said, all right, that computer vision, it needs to happen locally. So when the screen changes here, when I move this window, pixels are changing on the screen. We're recognizing that pixels change on the screen. We analyze the change of the pixels with computer vision. We extract the textual content, think OCR on steroids. Then that content doesn't get sent off to the server. Only things you configure to get sent off. So if you configure CVEs, for instance, then those would get sent off to the server to get the context that, to do that exploit finding search, or in this case, the IP to go and grab the MaxMind data or grab the Showdown data. That's what's getting sent off to the server. So if you have like a sensitive document on your screen or a password, for instance, that wouldn't get sent off to our server. Only the things you configure to look up. Or if you want, if you're paranoid too, you can always leave it in on-demand mode, and then it would be only the content that you actually select and hit the keystroke on, or that you paste into this window.
Hey, Paul.
And those servers live in your own local environment if you're on the paid subscription version.
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have a question from the Discord, if I may transfer it over.
Please do the honors, Jeff. Thank you.
Sure. Dimitri is asking, do you have any issues triggering antivirus or endpoint protection systems?
We've had one or two issues over the years. It's pretty rare. And many of the antivirus and endpoint protection solutions are customers of Polarity or partners of ours. So it gets resolved pretty quickly if there's been any issues. But we've I think over the past 5 years, maybe one or two that I can remember. So actually, I probably should brag about one thing there. So this is running in user space. A lot of folks see what we're doing and they say, "Wow, you must be running really low level at the kernel," and absolutely not the case. We're running in user space as a regular application. Here, I'll show that with Task Manager quick here. And also take a moment to brag about the CPU usage. You see us using less than Zoom right now, and that's while the screen is changing.
Well, hold on, Paul. That's not saying much.
That's not saying much.
Yeah, that's like saying you're using less than Chrome. I mean, I get it. I'm not. But yeah.
Fair enough. Chrome does have more memory than Polarity, as you can see here.
And Zoom will eat your machine alive. Nothing but love, Zoom, but
Chrome and Zoom both will consume most of the resources. But I mean, what you're saying is it doesn't need a lot of resources to do what you're doing.
Heads-up
So
display
the key
versus
here
live
is
video.
it's only using resources when the screen's changing a lot, like
Gotcha.
when I had it clicked into Task Manager. But you can see now we're not even on the screen. We're pushed way below the list here.
Right, but Paul, that's common for any program that's interacting with what's moving on the screen. In other words, if you're in Linux and you're moving a window around, if you've got top running at the same time, you can see your window manager working hard to keep up with that because it's a graphics and display driver interaction that's going to eat up your cycles, right? So that's not uncommon.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So no worse than common things when you're moving them around. And I know you can't see that now, but from our perspective, still running in user space using the GPU bit there. Let's see, I think I have to actually show user. Maybe not. Forget how to pop in the user ID there, but absolutely running as my regular user.
Sweet.
I mean, I could really see this as I like what I see already, but I could see this as a forensics tool too. I mean, just
use cases are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you're just sitting there looking at it going, I mean, I don't even know how many times you're looking at forensics cases, and there's so much stuff there, and you're looking for those clues and tip-offs, like that lat long thing. I remember I had a forensics case I was giving people in a cert thing not that long ago, and people kept missing that there was lat long right there on the screen. I mean, they never picked up on that. I mean, some people did, but a lot of people never would catch that. And I was just thinking about that when you were showing that picture of Key West. I was thinking how valuable it would be to a forensic analyst who's looking at a lot of strange data, because it's not your system, it's somebody else's system. And you just, stuff starts popping up and you're going, what is that? And this thing's telling you what that is up front, and at least catching your attention to things you ought to be noticing. I like that a lot.
Yeah, actually, I'll show off some of those features now. So I'm going to kind of show off stuff that you'd see in the Enterprise Edition a little bit more. You can do many of this with the Community Edition too. So one of the key kind of things that makes this more enterprise-oriented is that I'm going to turn on a lot of integrations all at the same time. So let me see. I'm going to start integrating Flashpoint data. Let's see, what else? Intel 471. So I'm going to grab a bunch of the threat data. We'll grab Intel, maybe Virus Total. And for folks that are watching the live, I'm just scrolling through a whole bunch of different technologies that cybersecurity professionals use day to day, and just cherry picking a handful just for demo reasons. But there's no reason why you couldn't have all of those sources integrated with Polarity.
And Paul, URL scan, that's urlscan.io, the website.
That's right. Yeah. So that's this preview right here that you see based on
pretty handy tool if
you have URL scan data. So when you think about Polarity and data that we're integrating, basically you can think of it as you integrate it once, or you turn it on in Polarity, or in this case, I subscribe to the data in Polarity is what I just did with, for instance, Flashpoint. And now with that data, it's available every tool I use. So wherever I come across anything relevant to that data, I'm going to have that context. So let me pull up one of the Microsoft bulletins.
Paul, does that include when I hover over a link in an application and it shows me the URL? Because that's displayed on the screen, right?
Yeah. So if you had a link here and it's in URL scan, you'd pull it back. There you go. There's the URL.
There it goes.
Microsoft.
And that includes when I hover, like if I'm in an email application and I hover over a link and then that pops up what the actual URL is, it would still highlight that, right? Because it's on the screen.
That's right. Yeah. So if it's on the screen,
may or may not have used that today for you.
Right. That's how you got me back the information so quickly, Tyler.
Hey, so all my secrets.
Tyler and I collaborate on a lot of covert operations together. So Tyler, thank you for that.
So Paul, how do you price the enterprise versions, and is there some sort of pricing model in between, like for small operations, like onesie, twosie licenses?
Yeah, so for onesie, twosie licenses, we're typically pricing per user, and we're very affordable. So think the less than $10,000 range per user per year for that subscription for enterprise. For enterprises with 20, 30 folks, we're still less than 6 digits. So, definitely fall less than the typical cybersecurity technologies fall. We're not into 6 digits until you're up to over 50 or 100 users in that space.
Gotcha. And you say there's a community edition that anybody can use. The servers are just on your end in that case.
Yeah. So in that case, that you have an account on one of our servers and it's free to use, and you're just limited by the number of integrations. And again, the integrations are only going to work for the ones that connect to data sources that are available on the internet. Or if you punch a hole through your firewall, but I don't recommend doing that.
Yeah, sure. Great technology.
Yeah.
So any issues with scaling on the integrations or impact of availability type things?
So from a number of integrations that you put on your Polarity account, you're on an enterprise server, not typically an issue, right? So if you had 100 things you wanted to be thorough with, you'd put them all on there. It wouldn't be a problem. From in case you're asking from an API perspective, some data sources are not very performant. So think, you go to an index in Splunk that hasn't been optimized for the query. We're still usually pretty good because it's still human scale data. In other words, the rate at which individuals, analysts look at data on the screen is still very much human scale. So typically not a problem. We do have caching built in. So you can set a TTL on results if you get results back, and you can set a separate TTL on things if you have misses. And that usually gives a lot of flexibility. You can also set whether or not the cache is shared across a team, which also greatly reduces an API load, for instance.
And Paul, just to speak to that team aspect, that's an enterprise feature. In other words, if there's a team, like a blue team and or a red team, and you have an enterprise version, you can make notes and share that across the team. And that's one of the differences between the free version and the commercial version, correct?
That's probably the biggest difference, other than getting the server on-prem. The other biggest difference is really that ability to take notes. So I had an example here, Notepad++.
Well, Tyler just posted in the chat an awesome example of a password hash. And Tyler, for a red team, that's a huge, awesome use case, right? Like, hey, I've already cracked that hash and it showed up on my screen.
Yeah, and
now I know what the value is. I don't have to go crack it again.
That's right. Yeah. So that hash, you put a note on it. You just hit a keystroke. So you double tap Control-C, and it gives us access to take notes on something, including a file hash or a password hash. You take the note, and then the next time that hash is on your screen, you're seeing that note. So in this case, I just set up an example here. Maybe this is in scope. These are the assets in scope for a red team exercise or a pen test. So I can take that note that this is in scope, hit apply. Now, that kind of scope highlighting is going to be available everywhere. Actually, let me just
or imagine from the defensive side that those are critical assets or assets to be mindful of.
Absolutely, yeah. So on the offensive side, right, going back to that that example here. Now
Paul, I think you should just add Tyler to your sales team, right? Give him a commission.
Have to, clearly.
That's great.
No, Tyler doesn't have enough to do.
Sounds like all our users. Try it out and you'll talk like Tyler, right? So example here, right? Back to that other screen I had up. Things with the green highlight are the things in scope. So here's everything in scope, including very, very much close this CIDR aware. So you can see that's the CIDR range in scope. And then this IP maybe is not in scope. So before you start to scan it, catch that. But to the blue team side, when you start looking at a lot of data, so I have just PCAP data in Excel.
Yeah, because no one uses Excel, right, Paul, to analyze data for security purposes.
Never.
No, don't do
not
that.
A thing.
Can't be done, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you probably want to use Wireshark if you're looking at PCAP, but yeah, don't put it in Excel. But if you did, or it's in Wireshark, it doesn't matter. That's the beauty of Polarity. It's going to run on top of both of those. And what you can see is there's all sorts of bright colors, patterns here. Purple right now means current investigation. So you can see as you kind of build out an investigation, you add something, you take a note on an IP, and you put it in an investigation. now you get the highlights. Maybe this is potentially intruded upon, or whatever that note might be. You can see I have a couple notes on that. All the things in blue are user assets. Everything with pink on it has threat data on it, so I can see some threat info here. Everything in orange is a vulnerability. So you can look at raw data and really have these colorful patterns emerge and say, all right, I'm looking at the user asset, I'm tracking, that looks like ARP poisoning or something like that. And if for anyone who's ever looked at MAC addresses and ARP poisoning, you know that your brain hurts pretty immediately. Or if you have IPv6 addresses, another thing where you get a headache within 5 minutes of analyzing a bunch of
I feel like this is just like cheating. Like we've done it the hard way for so long, and this is just like cheating, which is great.
Paul, you want to talk about scaling it all? I mean, it doesn't feel like it's that big of an impact in terms of setting up your own server, but
it's not. The server is it's typically a single server architecture or a couple servers if you set up two for DR reasons. But we'll scale to hundreds of users with just a single server. If you're large organization or government organization and you have thousands of users, it's a little bit more thoughtful architecture of setting up multiple servers to support that. But in most cases, for most of our customers, it's a single server architecture plus disaster recovery.
Nice.
Think about an Elk Stack or Splunk dashboard where you have certain queries and you're really trying to get down to what's important and make notes on stuff very quickly. Like we've seen some great use cases that way too.
And Jeff, I know you had that question in the chat too, that community members can write their own integrations, right?
Yeah, I should have asked Paul that, but that's what I wanted to clarify.
No, it's a great
Tyler
question.
said yes, so can you speak to that, Paul?
Yeah, so GitHub has a whole bunch of source code publicly available. If any community members want to write integrations, we typically give them a single license, development license, and we do training. I mean, we want to for free because we want to encourage that development work and building within the community. Lots of examples out there, but that's one of those things. Reach out after you set up a Community Edition account, and we'll set you up for development.
That's awesome, Paul. Yeah, because so many companies are like, oh yeah, like it's free and it's open and you're on your own to develop stuff. And what you just said, Paul, was that you would help them basically through training.
Could you run this like in kind of a hidden mode, where like I'm sitting in a control room and I'm monitoring all the users in my enterprise and seeing if they're putting certain things on their screens? That's
a good segue to what I'm going to show you next, but not quite in the way I think you're asking.
Okay.
So there's no monitor mode or monitoring mode where users can't see it. So we are very much want to be a desktop technology where the analysts and users are very aware that it's running, and they always have the ability to even shut off the computer vision at any moment just by toggling here. So that is very in line with how we set it up. There's no way to install Polarity without having this window in the foreground where analysts know. That being said, there is the ability, and this is more seen with our enterprise customers, to collect telemetry from analysts to understand your workflows and your data and your team better.
This is kind of Paul showed this to me.
Windows open.
It's really cool and a great response to your question, Doug.
So let's say the last 30 minutes here, I've been running the demo, and I've been collecting some telemetry off of my screen. I've been collecting various types of indicators, some of the applications I've been in, the window titles I've been in. And here's a little word cloud of what I've been looking at. I'm logged in as Alice right now, in case you're wondering. Raw data kind of down here, pretty simple stuff. This is what we're grabbing. Really just IOCs or indicators or assets if it's internal. This lets me do some fun stuff. So I can take a look at for a team, if I'm optimizing processes, I can take a look at an individual indicator or a set of indicators and say, all right, let me follow this through. Here's all the different tools I used for that indicator. Maybe set up a playbook, maybe set up some automation or orchestration around it. I can find blind spots. I can find things that don't have any enrichment that I'm unaware of. Like, what is that asset that just keeps coming up? I can look at the different workflows between team members. So I can say, what's the difference between a senior analyst and a junior analyst? Are they using different tools? Are they spending more time in a given area? So some of these things you can do with the data. And this really does still go back to the define three things. In this case, the first thing I'm defining is I want to look at indicators on the screen. I want to, the action I'm going to take is send them off to Elasticsearch. I'm looking at it here just in Kibana, but send it off to Elasticsearch and log the fact of what application I saw it in, the window title, and the user. And then the thing to overlay, I didn't overlay anything. So in this case, I skipped the third thing and didn't actually overlay any information. To tie that back, though, I'm going to tie into the same Elasticsearch cluster that you see the data displayed here. Over to integrations and grab Elasticsearch. And what this does is that, if you ever had that IP deja vu moment where you say, I swear I saw that IP before, why does it look so familiar? Polarity can truly provide you that context of when is the first time you saw this thing. So I'm going to bring us back to the beginning of the conversation here. So I had this on my screen, and let's see, grab this window here. There we go. I pulled in Elasticsearch, and now I can see, all right, when's the first time I looked at this CVE and who on my team was the first person to look at it? Oh, I also added in, I didn't kind of pull that back, but remember I subscribed to Mandiant data. So Mandiant has some Intel reports on that given CVE, and I'm able to see that there. But I can see, all right, Alice saw this, and she saw it on this date, first time. So
Paul, I just want to drill down into collecting profiles from all of your analysts and looking at the differences between a senior analyst and a junior analyst. I think that enables a lot of interesting conversations and training and analysis to say, because oftentimes I think as senior analysts, which many of us are on the show today, right? We go, I don't know, I derived the answer. Like, I don't know how I derived the answer. Like, I'd really had to spend a lot of time thinking about how I derived the answer. Whereas if you have this tool, you can kind of look at the data that you showed previously just now, Paul, into here's how the tools I use and how much time I spent in each tool to derive maybe to some conclusion, and then go to the junior analyst, look at what they did, look at the differences, and go, here's how you can get better at deriving the answer more quickly. And I love that about that portion of it, Paul, that you can have now those conversations that don't require as much time to kind of explain, like, here's how I do things, right? Whereas normally that would take a long time.
And I was kind of thinking more of like a meta analyst too. So what I was thinking of was, like, if all your junior analysts or your regular analysts are out there in the field and they're looking at things, you might see things they would miss even when they're doing this by looking at this sort of like collection of data and go, and then you could like send an alert to everybody and go, this IP seems to be popping up all over the place. We might want to dig into that a little more.
That too. Yeah.
That's where that team collaboration comes in, and the notes between it. They allow the notes between operators, but they also allow for one of the ways that we've seen it used and used it is playbooks. Like, hey, you've seen this type of CVE, or hey, you've seen this, SMB v2 with this particular setting. Like, highlight it, and now you've got a command by command like script book of here's a command to run to do a SAM dump. If you're getting popped by AV, here's the next 5 commands you can use to get by that. Or from a defensive standpoint, like, here's the settings to enable with inside of a GPO. As you're looking at that GPO and you have a field, here's the settings to enable via the playbook and the commands to run via PowerShell if you need to do it that way. So there's a whole ton of integration via the notes side from an enterprise standpoint.
Yeah, it's especially powerful when you're onboarding new employees in that context, right? So if you have these institutional processes that the new employee is not aware of, you can highlight on their screen when you have something relevant and show them the process right there in line, which is pretty powerful. All right, I'm going to show one more thing, and we can wrap this portion up. The other context I was going to show, I'm just tying together a few integrations off of this Windows Microsoft Bulletin. So I have CVE on my screen here. As we already demonstrated, we can get to exploits pretty quick. So I can see, all right, here's one written in Ruby. one written in Python here. But the other part is,
I'm sorry, Paul. Did you say there was 2 written in Python? I think that's what you said.
Yeah, two written in Python for every 1 written in Ruby. That's right.
That's what I heard.
So the other side of it is, right, I have vulnerability, but what are my adversaries doing with that right now? So I can see some intel reports. This data specifically sourced from Flashpoint. I can even go right into dark web conversations that are happening about these given vulnerabilities. So that can be pretty powerful
cool.
to go from
really
vulnerability to dark web conversation. Here, much of this is in Cyrillic. Let me do a quick translation. So we have a Google Maps integration, and here now I have the translation of that back out to English.
Sorry, you meant Google Translate integration.
Sorry, yeah, Google Translate. Did I say Maps?
Yep, you have both, but yeah.
That's right.
No worries.
and Chronicle and Google Search Engine and what other Google ones do we have? Google Drive, a bunch of the Google ones.
Nice.
All right. Well, that's all I have prepared. But happy to dive into any areas or show anything else.
Yeah, Paul, I think we're struggling to find a reason why you wouldn't want to use this product. It was really the conclusion.
So yeah, with that, I'll let me show. How do you get this? So
and there's Paul. Is there a waiting list for the community edition?
There is a wait list, but for listeners of this show, they get to bypass it.
Oh, interesting. Because we were telling people that we're driving them to the wait list link, but now.
So yeah, if you go to the SW link, which I think is the same link that you've been.
Yeah. So if you go to securityweekly.com/polarity.
Yep. So I think it forwards over to this same page, and this now lets you bypass the wait list. So you get to skip the line if you sign up through Security Weekly.
I love it. Security Weekly listeners get to skip the line. Like membership has its privileges, I guess.
That's right.
I love it.
We figure if you're listening to this show, that's some level of validation right there that you know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great.
And then you get 2 options. So here, if you pick the get the Security Weekly configuration, it's the configuration that I just demoed, everything at the beginning with the exploit finder, the CVE, URL scan, Shodan, and MaxMind. So those are the ones you'd get with that configuration. Or you can pick this side and then select some other integrations that maybe you use.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
I like it.
That's too bloody easy.
Right? All you need to remember, and Paul, thank you very much for that. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
And a fantastic tool to help all of us, whether you're red team or blue team, if you're
or just some other team altogether.
Right? Yeah, you can utilize this technology, and thank you very much for doing that for our audience. So, going to securityweekly.com/polarity will give you access to this immediately and let you skip the line. And so go do that. Paul, thank you so much for appearing on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
With that, we'll take a short break, come back with the security news, where we'll talk about hackers want to take away your coffee. Stay tuned.